Camp special session today. I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services, and we're excited to have you with us on this Wednesday afternoon. We haven't done many afternoon boot camp sessions, so we're glad to see a good number joining us today. It's also a great topic, and we wanted to get this information out to you as quickly as possible once the program went live, and so we're glad you could join us today. To start, I'd like to go through some of our boot camp slides, and for those that are new to the boot camp, so you can learn a little bit about it. First, we'd like to thank all of our community partners. We could not do these boot camp sessions without them, their time and their expertise. They bring a lot to the table, and we appreciate it very much. The Small Business Boot Camp is designed to help small businesses work through the COVID crisis, return stronger than ever, and it is a statewide initiative supported by all of our community partners. Additionally, thanks to those community partners, we have our resource collective and our content library. On our bootcamp website, which is the site you went to register for today's session, you can find our upcoming webinars, and we'll touch on some of those here in a second. But you'll also find the resource collective, and the resource collective is a page we set up to provide the tools and guides and resources that our community partners have brought and shared with us so that small businesses can benefit as a great resource available to you. Additionally, we have our small business content library. And this is one of those unintended benefits that came from the Small Business Boot Camp. When we started the boot camp, we recorded every session, and we made that a program so we could share for those that couldn't attend at the 9 o'clock hour or the hours that we did do the sessions. But over the past year and a half of doing these boot camps, it's created a massive content library of expert content that all of you can access at no cost. It's on the bottom of the boot camp website, you'll find the archive and a list by week, all the different webinars we've done over the past 65 weeks. You can go on there, review the webinar, and download the materials that were provided for those. Two other websites that are very important during this time is the state's COVID-19 information and resource page, arizonatogether.org. And then the Arizona Commerce Authority set up the COVID-19 business resource page, which is azcommerce.com/COVID-19. There's a great website that includes business guidance, funding opportunities, and financial guidance for businesses, and many other great items. The ACA also has a number of programs that help support small businesses. First, we have our small business services. We also have our workforce division, and then we have our Arizona MEP Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Great programs to help support small businesses throughout Arizona. For those looking to start a small business during this time, we have our small business checklist. And this is a highly detailed, interactive online resource that can help you identify the licensing, registration, and compliance needs of starting a new business or expanding your business in Arizona. It is a checklist format. You can print the you can print your results, you can email your results, and it includes a lot of in-depth information. So please check that out. Some quick updates. We're going to talk about PPP loan forgiveness. We're going to post a couple important links for PPP stuff in the chat, but Amber will get in more detail here shortly. One thing we're going to post in there as well is a session we did, a very detailed session on the PPP loan forgiveness with Beach Fleischman and Prestamos CDFI. Amber asked us to share that information, that link to everybody, so we have that in there. We're also going to post up some links for information on the Employee Retention Credit, DEIDL Targeted Advanced, and the Arizona Innovation Challenge. So look at some of the upcoming sessions on Thursday, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We've got strategies to engage today's workforce. We brought in the Society of Human Resource Management, the Arizona chapter, to help us with a number of boot camp sessions. Last Thursday, they did the basics of HR. Tomorrow, they've got their second one, the strategies to engage. And then you'll notice on next Thursday, they have a talent acquisition strategies. Sandwiched in between those on next Tuesday, we have our gaps, the space between where you are and where you want to be. And that's going to be an exciting session with a new presenter that we haven't had on before. So we're looking forward to that. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Amber. Amber Cordova is the Director of Business Education and Consulting Services at Prestamos CDFI, a Community Development Finance Institution. They are a mission-driven lender as part of Chicanos por la Causa. And they have been a great partner of ours, and so we're excited to have her back to share the information. As a lender that's done a lot of PPPs loans, this is right up our alley to talk about the forgiveness and the forgiveness portal. So Amber, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn the time over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for having me today, Robert, and to Arizona Commerce Authority, and for everybody attending or watching. Go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program and the updates with the new Direct Forgiveness Portal. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we get started. As mentioned in the chat, if you do have questions, try to use the Q&A function, and we will do a Q&A presentation at the end. I've tried to leave about 15 minutes available for Q&A. A copy of the webinar will be uploaded onto the Bootcamp Collective website. Typically that happens within a day or so. If you do need a copy of any of the documents or a copy of the actual slides, I'm happy to send them to you. You can send an email to forgiveness.prestamos@cplc.org and we will send that to you. Today's discussion, we're going to just go over a basic overview of the PPP forgiveness requirements. So the PPP program, the acceptable use of funds, questions about FTE, and just basics on documentation. In the chat, you'll see that they placed a former recording that we did a couple months back that's really comprehensive and really goes into detail. So if you have a lot more questions or need more information, I recommend watching that collective bootcamp session. We will talk about the new SBA Direct Forgiveness Portal that just opened up on the 4th. We'll go through, we'll do a walkthrough, and we'll talk about the specifics. And we'll talk a little bit about the new COVID revenue reduction score that came out with the forgiveness portal. So just a quick PPP in a nutshell. Is your PPP loan forgivable? And PPP, we're talking about the Paycheck Protection Program. It is an SBA loan, but it is potentially forgivable up to 100% if it's used correctly. And we'll talk about the ways to use it correctly and the documentation. And you use it over an 8 to 24 week period, which is called your covered period. And I do want to clarify that you must apply for forgiveness. Forgiveness is not automatic. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to apply. And we'll talk in a little bit about exactly how to do that. But there's no automatic forgiveness. I know there's been a lot of misconceptions about it, but you do actually have to apply for and receive forgiveness. So make sure that you do that. We'll go into detail about how you can use your PPP funds in the next slides, but really it's mostly supposed to be used for payroll, owner compensation replacement, and other eligible expenses. Again, it's an 8 to 24 week covered period. And if you do not apply for forgiveness or you don't receive some level of forgiveness, whether it's the full or partial amount, it does have to be repaid over a 5-year term at a 1% interest rate directly to your lender, not to the SBA. But we're going to talk about how we can help you make sure that you don't have to pay back your PPP loan. So the eligible uses for the PPP is 60% for payroll and 40% for other eligible expenses. And when we talk about payroll, we're talking about all of your wages, tips, commissions, vacations, sick time, and health and retirement benefits that you've paid on behalf of your employees, and then state unemployment tax. The employee portion of federal taxes paid to the IRS or for Social Security and Medicare are already a part of their gross wages, so you don't count those in addition. And the employer portion of those taxes is not something that you can utilize the PPP funds for. Operation expenditures are going to be your business and rent, lease, utilities, mortgage, or fixed loan interest portion only. Other operations expenditures like software, cloud computing, human resources, and accounting needs, especially those that have come out of the COVID crisis. So if you've had to get a lot of different types of software for your business to take things online or to work remotely, those are eligible expenses. If you had property damage as a result of public disturbances in 2020 that insurance or other sources didn't cover, you could use your PPP for that. And other worker protection like personal protection equipment or small modifications to your establishment to allow for safe social distancing and health. So all of the non-payroll expenses that are eligible cannot exceed 40%. You need to use 60% for payroll. To clarify on the mortgage obligations or on the fixed loans, again, it's the interest per portion only, and it's no prepayment or for principal payments. And you need to have had that real and or personal property prior to February 15th, 2020. So if you got into a new lease or a new space after February 15th, then those expenses might not be eligible. Rent is going to be rent or lease, again, February 15th, they needed to be in effect. And utility payments for electric, gas, water, telephone, transportation, or internet access. Again, you needed to have the services in place prior to February 15th, 2020. And the reason for the February 15th, 2020 date is to have been eligible for a PPP loan in the first place, you had to have been in operation on February 15th, 2020. The other operations expenditures, as I mentioned, different business software, cloud computing. So if you had some accounting, HR, inventory, payroll, billing, any of those items, your supplier costs, so costs for goods that are essential to your business operations. So if you're a restaurant or have perishable goods, those are covered supplier costs. And then again, covered worker protection, anything that was used for sanitation, social distancing, or worker or customer safety as a result of COVID-19. Remember, those can be up to 40%. Now, if you're self-employed and you used your Schedule C and your self-employment income to apply for your PPP, then you're entitled to what's called owner compensation replacement. And across all your businesses, your owner compensation replacement maximum is $20,833. For self-employed individuals only, your covered period requirement, you want to make sure that you select a covered period of at least 11 weeks, and we'll talk more about that in a future slide. And for documentation, some lenders, Schedule C that you originally filed with is sufficient documentation because according to the rules, you're technically automatically just approved for owner compensation replacement based on that Schedule C. But some lenders might want to see documentation like weekly or monthly draws, a copy of cash checks, transfers between your bank accounts, something along those lines just to show that you did pay yourself. And it really just depends on the lender. If you're self-employed, you use your Schedule C, you have owner compensation replacement, if you choose an 8-week covered period, it's capped at 8/52 of your 2019 or 2020 compensation. So it's kind of a complicated formula, but you're going to get capped at forgiveness at $15,385. So if your PPP loan was $20,000, you won't be eligible for the full amount if you choose an 8-week covered period. You want to use at least a 10-week covered period. Actually 11 weeks, even 10 weeks only gives you $19,231, so you would still have a partial repayment. So you want to use an 11 to 24 week covered period so you can get access to full forgiveness. If you have questions about this, you can look at the actual forgiveness application, the 3508, 3508EZ or 3508S, and it will talk about that in the actual rules. I promise I didn't make this up. Now, if you're an employer that has W-2 employees and you provided payroll documentation in order to get your PPP loan, And remember, when we talk about W-2 employees, we're talking about those employees where you paid them normal payroll, you withheld taxes, you gave them a W-2 at the end of the year. You need to use at least 60% of your PPP for qualified payroll expenses. You can use all 100% of your PPP loan for W-2 wages. That's completely fine and really the easiest way to use your funding. You can use anywhere from an 8 to 24 week covered period. There's no minimum. And then the other 40%, again, can be used for all those other qualified expenses like the rent, utilities, worker protection. Your qualified payroll expenses are going to be your gross wages, any salary that you've paid, tips, paid time off, bonuses, anything you've paid to your employees up to $100,000 per employee. Any company sponsored, which means that you've paid for health and retirement benefits, are in addition to that $100,000 cap. So if you did, match 401k, or you pay a portion of your employees' health benefits, that portion is something you can use the PPP for. And then state unemployment taxes only. You cannot use the PPP for federal unemployment, workers' compensation, or federal taxes that you pay on behalf of your employees. The type of documentation you're going to want to make sure that you have to apply for forgiveness is going to be payroll reports for the covered period. And if possible, you want to make sure you provide that by employee so that you can show that no employee was paid over $100,000. If they were paid over $100,000 during that covered period, any amount over $100,000 would be excluded. You can show bank statements that have the payroll deductions. You can also provide your quarterly 941 reports. Those are the reports that you file with the IRS. Here in Arizona, we also have quarterly unemployment reports, the UC018. A lot of lenders will take those as well. One thing to clarify is that your lender is the one that is making the determination and recommendation to the SBA on the forgiveness. So you submit all of your documentation and your forgiveness request to your lender. They make the determination, and then they give it to the SBA for the final decision. So you need to follow the rules of what your individual lender is asking for. So when is it time to apply for forgiveness? Now, as soon as you've utilized the funds and it's been at least 8 weeks, at that point, you're eligible to apply for forgiveness. You can't apply before the end of the 8 weeks. Remember, if you're self-employed, you want to wait at least 11 weeks. And you can wait up until 10 months after the end of your covered period. So that 8 to 24 week period, whatever time you're selecting as your covered period, you have 10 weeks from the end of that to apply for forgiveness. So technically it could be up to 16 months after you receive the deposit into your bank account. Now, if you miss that deadline, you can still apply for partial forgiveness. If you miss the deadline, you're likely going to have to start making payments on your PPP loan to your lender, but you can still apply for forgiveness. And once you actually submit your application for forgiveness, everything stops until a decision is made. So even if you don't receive forgiveness before the end of that 16 months or the 12 months, everything stops and you won't have to make payments as long as you've submitted for forgiveness. Now, I know this is something that probably makes a lot of sense, but I've had this question asked. You need to apply for your first draw before you apply for the second draw. You can apply for your first draw and immediately apply for your second draw afterwards, your forgiveness, but you need to apply for your first draw forgiveness first. You don't have to have received it. You just have to file it first. The documents that are required, again, this is really going to depend by your lender and what their requirements are, but you're going to fill out your form 3508, and you'll either have the 3508, the easy, or the S version. If you are a second draw borrower, if you got a second draw, you will need to provide evidence of a 25% reduction in your sales unless you meet the COVID reduction score minimum, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. And then you'll need to provide your use of funds documentation. So that's the payroll records or copies of checks, invoices, all of that information. There's two ways that you're able to apply for forgiveness, and it really just depends on your individual lender and whether or not they are opting into the portal. If your PPP loan is $150,000 or under, and your lender has opted into the PPP Direct Forgiveness Portal, then you can apply directly through the portal. Otherwise, you have to apply directly through your lender. There are some specific rules and technology you need to have in order to use the direct portal. So if you're unable to use it, then you'll need to apply directly through your lender as well. Each PPP loan requires a separate loan forgiveness application. So you can't include your first draw and second draw forgiveness application. Together, you have to do your first draw and your second draw separate. If you have multiple PPP loans for multiple businesses, they all need their own application for forgiveness as well. The process for forgiveness, once you've submitted your completed application, your lender is going to have 60 days to make the determination. They might come back to you and ask for additional information. They might reject your application, ask you to fix something and then resubmit. If that happens, the clock of 60 days restarts. The portal, I will tell you guys right now, it's brand new. It just opened up on August 4th. Some lenders were given an early access with a pilot program. However, if it was the pilot program, there was only 2 or 3 days to play around. So it's a new system for everybody, not just you as the borrowers. It's also new for us as the lenders. So we are working to try to work out the kinks. But the purpose of this streamlined direct forgiveness platform is to make it a lot easier for lenders to push the approval process through a lot easier. So hopefully it won't take the full 60 days. Once your lender has made the recommendation, either through the portal or through their internal system to the SBA has 90 days to make a final determination on forgiveness. In the beginning, it was taking 90 days. We saw a lot of our approvals not come through until 85, 86 days. Now it's happening within a week or two, so the turnaround time is very quick. So now I'm going to go over the specifics of the direct forgiveness portal. And again, this is for anybody that has a PPP loan of $150,000 or under, and your lender has opted into the direct forgiveness portal. If it hasn't happened yet, it could still be something that your lender opts into. So in order to register, you're going to go to the directforgiveness.sba.gov website. That's the only place where you can log in. Make sure that if you receive an email or you're browsing the web, that any links to this website is exactly the directforgiveness.sba.gov. We all know that there's scams and spoofs out there, so you want to make sure that you are going in and providing your information into the correct portal. Again, this is $150,000 or under. They recommend that you use Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome to have the optimal experience. And all new registration will be required to utilize this portal. So if you've not registered, you need to register first. When you are going to start your application and register, you're going to have to go through a wizard, just like we're all familiar with doing, with a username, an email address, and you cannot change your email address once you've created the registration. So make sure that you choose an email address that you have access to at any given time. There's security requirements for the password, and there's a CAPTCHA, and then you hit sign up, and you'll get 2 separate emails you want to make sure you look out for. One is to verify the email address. You will get your link to continue your registration. You'll need to confirm your email address. And remember, again, once you verify your email, you cannot change it. So make sure you're using an email that you will have access to. You'll go and you'll sign in. If you forget your password, then you can reset your password. You just can't change your email. Another really important piece is that you have to have a US-based mobile phone number, because you're going to receive a text message for the 2-factor authentication. So every time you log into the portal, you're going to get the code on your cell phone, and you need to put the code in, the token into the system in order to get in. This is a security feature. The provider can't be a VoIP, a voice over IP phone carrier, so you do need to make sure that you have one that can receive SMS. It doesn't necessarily have to be your mobile phone, but you will need to have access to the mobile phone in order to get that token. I've used this and played around with it, and I have to say that the company that they contracted out did make this portal pretty easy. It's pretty easy to use. It's pretty quick. You can get through your forgiveness application in 8-10 minutes, and that's with kind of stumbling around. There's not a lot that you can do, so I think that that helps make it a little bit easier. You can start a new PPP request or look at all existing requests. So if you've applied for your PPP, you can come, or PPP forgiveness, you can come back, take a look, and see what your status is. You can also, if you see here on number 6 where I've circled, you can take a guided tour. And if you click that button, it'll do pop-ups and let you know everything that you need to do along the way. If you have questions along the way, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little question mark where you can use like a database of questions. You can type in questions and it'll pull up FAQs. There's a phone number that you can call that has, I believe, 13 different languages. And in the right-hand corner, there's also an inbox where you can send inbox messages. So there's tons of opportunities to get a hold of somebody that can help walk you through. So when you're starting a new request, you will hit the Start New Forgiveness Request. That's up at the top, or the blue box. You'll enter either your EIN, Social Security number, or ITIN. You'll enter in your SBA loan amount, and then you can click Find Your Loan. If you do have your SBA loan number, there's a little hyperlink where you can click and you can put in the loan number instead of the loan amount, and it'll automatically pull up your loan. And then your EIN is your employer identification number. Your SSN number is your social security number. And then your ITIN is if you have an ITIN number. When you go in, your loan information is automatically going to be populated and it's locked for editing. There's only a couple fields that are available for you to fill out information. If you're looking and you see your business information and there's something that's incorrect, you will have to go back to your lender to ask them to correct it. You won't be able to correct your information from the system. The only things that you're going to do is enter your title, your primary contact, and your business industry. Those are the only items that you'll be able to, edit on that first page. The next section is going to ask you your covered period information. You have 3 options. You can choose 8 weeks, 24 weeks, or between 8 and 24 weeks. And it'll provide you information on your covered period start date and end date. If you're a second draw, they will ask you for your gross receipts for 2019 and 2020, unless you have already passed your COVID reduction score, and that's for second draw. So you might not even get asked that question. And again, we'll talk about the COVID reduction score. You'll put in the number of employees you had at the time you applied for the PPP. So you might need to go back to your original application and see what you put as the number of employees when you applied. And then the number of employees at the time of loan forgiveness, so how many you have today. If you're self-employed and you don't have any employees, you can put 0. You're going to put in the amount of PPP spent on payroll. And remember that this number should be 60% or more. If you have owner compensation replacement, you can put the full amount of your PPP. Now, something really, really important is the requested forgiveness amount field. You want to make sure that you enter the full amount of your PPP if you are requesting your full PPP be forgiven. I've seen a lot of people put in $5 off or $500 off or certain amounts that are not the exact amount of the PPP. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen throughout the whole entire process, it tells you the amount of your PPP loan. That's the exact number that you want to put into that field if you're requesting full forgiveness. If you're not requesting full forgiveness, maybe you only use part of the funds, that's fine. just double check and make sure that if you are requesting 100% forgiveness, that you do fill out that requested forgiveness amount for the exact same amount, even if it's just cents. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay back the difference. Providing demographic information is optional and it won't impact your forgiveness request, but it is important that everybody's providing as much demographic information as possible so that the SBA can track and make sure that the funding is going where it's supposed to, and that there's information available about who got access to the program. Now, documentation may not be required depending on your COVID score or your particular situation. You may not have to upload any documentations at all. So before you start preparing all of your documents, I would recommend going onto the forgiveness portal, start the process and see if it's going to ask you for anything. If it does, then you know what you need to collect. If it doesn't ask you for documents, my recommendation is don't provide something that's not being asked for, because if your lender does review it and for some reason they decide that the documentation you've provided shows that you're not eligible for full forgiveness, they have to utilize the documentation, even if the system said you didn't need to provide anything. So in this situation, more information, more documentation is not better. Only provide what you're asked for. Again, they'll tell you exactly what documents you need if you need to provide any. And then you need to make sure you hit the submit and continue to electronic signature. You will be required to do the DocuSign. The DocuSign pops up directly into the portal. It's not an email that comes to you and you don't have to go anywhere else to fill it out. Once you sign and submit your DocuSign, edits cannot be made to the application. You can withdraw your request if it's right below there. If you realize you made a mistake or you're not ready to submit, or you could just leave and come back. It should save where you're at in the spot, but you need to make sure that you do submit it. We have a lot of people that have started filling it out. They get all their information, but they don't hit the submit button. It happens all the time. So just remember to hit submit in order to actually submit your PPP forgiveness application. If you're missing any items, it won't allow you to submit. It'll tell you what you need to fill out, and if there's additional information that you need to provide. You can click the hyperlink and it takes you right back to any information that you might have missed. So very easy. It will tell you exactly what you need to do if you've not completed everything that you need to do. Immediately, it will pop up the DocuSign. You'll need to agree to the electronic records and signature and hit continue. And then it'll automatically take you through and have you sign all the spots that you need to sign, initial the spots that you need to initial. I would make sure that as you're going through, you read and make sure that what you're attesting to is accurate. Remember that this is a federal document, so we want to make sure that we're truthful in everything that we say and attest to. So that's the end of the portal. You can go back to that home page and you can always see the status of your application. Remember, once you've hit submitted, it'll tell you that it's submitted. And it actually walks you through, it's kind of hard to see, but down in the left-hand corner, there's a little green dot. It'll tell you once your e-signature has been received, once it's been submitted to your lender, and then once your lender submitted it to the SBA and it's under SBA review. And once the SBA provides forgiveness, determination, they will provide a letter that you can access through your inbox in order to be able to have it for your records. Now, the COVID reduction score is something that's new. This is something that borrowers, lenders don't have any participation in whatsoever. It's just something that happens automatically. It's in order to streamline the forgiveness process for the second draw PPP loans under $150,000. 93% of the PPP loans out are for loans under $150,000. And an independent third-party SBA contractor developed this score based out of a lot of different factors, which we don't exactly know, but it's industry, geography, business size, foot traffic, how information, all this information that they've collected to determine automatic calculation scores. Now, if you automatically met the required minimum value When you log into your portal, it will tell you that you met the minimum threshold and you don't have to provide that 25% reduction documentation. Now, if you do not meet the minimum value, you will still have to provide that 25% reduction information. This is another situation, again, where if it doesn't ask you to provide it, I would recommend not providing it. But if you do need to provide that revenue reduction information, you need to show that you had a 25% or more reduction in your gross receipts or gross sales in one quarter of 2020 compared to the same quarter of 2019, or your year-over-year sales. Again, this is just for those of you that are more interested in how this is calculated. Here's a little bit of information. You can look back on the slides and watch it back and pause it. I'm not going to read this, but it's just the methodology that they used and that was approved in order to create the revenue reduction score. So again, just some things to consider. If you're not required to submit documentation, just don't submit it. Don't provide more than you have to. Remember that your lender that you got your PPP from is the one that has to make the forgiveness decision, and they'll pass the recommendation to the SBA. The SBA has the ultimate decision on whether or not the loan's forgiven, but the forgiveness application has to go through your lender. This direct forgiveness portal is just an easy, streamlined way to help lenders expedite the process of forgiveness. The SBA is not making determinations until they've received recommendations from the lenders. And if there is a mistake within your pre-filled data that's on your forgiveness portal, you need to contact your PPP lender to make corrections. You can't make them from the portal, and the SBA can't make them directly. So again, the process, the actual application through the direct portal takes about 10 minutes per application. If you do have to apply directly with your lender, then you have to follow their process. The lender has 60 days from the time that you submit your application to make a recommendation to the SBA, to reject it, to reach out to you to get more information. The SBA then has 90 days to issue that final decision and pay off your loan or request repayment. Again, this process is taking a quick turnaround time. Depending on your lender's volume, it may take up to the 60 days, but the SBA has been pretty good about making determinations within a couple weeks. If your lender is not participating, you will need to work directly with your lender. It is optional for your lender to opt in to use the forgiveness portal or not. So you may or may not be able to utilize this. I think for the most part, most lenders are. It's a very easy to use system. But if your lender is not using the forgiveness portal, then you will need to work directly with them to apply for forgiveness. Same thing if your loan is more than $150,000, you'll need to work directly with your lender, as the forgiveness portal is only for $150,000 and below. If you had an EIDL advance, if you've gotten an EIDL or a target advance, that's a completely separate loan program. You can't refinance your EIDL or pay your EIDL payments with the PPP, and any advances are no longer withheld from forgiveness amounts. You want to make sure that you're only using the funds to pay W-2 employees and other eligible expenses. 1099 contractors were eligible for their own PPP, so they're not considered employees and they're not an eligible expense. And if you do have additional questions, again, they have a hotline that you can call. It's in multiple languages. You can log into the portal and you can inbox message the SBA, and you can feel free to reach out to us at Prestamos, whether you have a PPP loan with us or not. The email is forgiveness.prestamos@cplc.org, and we're happy to help you or answer questions. We also have a variety of other free resources. We have our Prestamos Prime program that's geared towards providing business assistance to eligible micro businesses in a lot of different areas. We have events and webinars that we put on, and then we also have the Women's Business Center that is located in Phoenix. All those resources are free. We also do additional lending with micro and other small business loans, so you can visit our website for information on that. And that takes us to the end of my presentation, but I will put a copy of this information into the chat function so that everybody has access, but it's the phone numbers, the Direct Forgiveness Portal link, the portal user guide, and then the FAQs, and also information about how to get in touch with me if you do have a question. So that is the end of the presentation. And I don't know if we want to go into Q&A now.
Yeah, we got a number of questions in there, so we can jump into Q&A.
Great. Okay. Let's see, we have received the second draw and we're forgiven on the initial PPP. Awesome. You asked your bank for guidance about the second draw and you've only used the funds for payroll as with the initial PPP. Then it sounds to me like if you've used 100% of your PPP loans, that you've used it correctly. So I would just go through the forgiveness process and provide any documentation that's requested. I'm not sure if there was a question there, but if you used 100% for payroll, then you've used it correctly. Your first draw provider keeps saying their platform is being set up with Biz2Credit. It hasn't happened yet. They're not on the portal. What can you do? Unfortunately, whatever method your lender is requiring you to use in order to apply for forgiveness, you have to follow through with. So I would be patient. I can tell you right now that the SBA, part of the reason they created this is because they really want to move along the forgiveness process and get as many loans forgiven as possible. So they're probably putting a lot of pressure on your lender. I know we receive, emails saying, increase your forgiveness numbers. So I'm sure that very soon Biz2Cred will be able to get their process rolling and give you that opportunity. You could also contact your regional or local district office for SBA and just, let them know that you're concerned that you're not going to be able to meet the deadline for applying for forgiveness. But that's really the best that you can do at this point.
Amber, with that, I would recommend that you save your documentation of emails and or calls if you've called and left messages with that lender, so that as you can show that you tried to apply for forgiveness within the correct time frame. So if you do start getting a loan statement requesting payments, you can follow up with that lender and say, wait a minute, I've been trying to apply for forgiveness, and you'll have the documentation for that.
Yep, absolutely. That's always CYA, cover yourself with documentation. Another question about the ERC, the Employee Retention Credit. That's something that I'm always going to refer you back to your CPA or for accounting advice on. I know that there's a couple of boot camp sessions, I think, along the lines of explaining the ERC. So I'm not going to touch that one just because I don't want to give bad advice, and that one is its own big, long discussion regarding the employee retention credit. If your application was submitted but got held up and submitted after funds ran out, are those applications going to be entertained? I see that it looks like, Andy, you've asked 2 questions around that. The PPP program ended on May 31st. However, the program was actually shut off on May 28th because funding ran out. It's hard to answer this question because there's a lot of technicalities. If you haven't received an approval number yet for your PPP loan, then it's not likely that your loan is going to go through. So the SBA basically shut all the lenders off from being able to submit anything that was in process with the SBA. If it hasn't already been processed, it's probably not going to get processed. However, you should reach back out to your lender that you applied with and just see where they're at. They're the only ones that can really answer that question for you. When can you start the forgiveness process for the second draw? So the first thing is you want to make sure that you've at least applied for the first draw. You can apply for forgiveness on your second draw if it's been a minimum of 8 weeks and you've used all the funds. Looks like there's another question that's specifically around you're butting up against on the 10-month, but your PPP lender has not opened up PPP forgiveness. Again, I would keep calling them, keep bugging them about it, keep any documentation that you've sent, document any calls that you make so that you have a written ledger, and maybe reach out to the SBA just to let them know that you are, trying to apply for forgiveness, but your lender is not giving you access to apply and you don't want to miss the deadline. Your loan was under $150,000. You called the lender and they don't have any record of the loan. Does that mean I go directly to the SBA portal? For this one, I would actually go to CAWEB. It's CAWEB. It's the online portal. So you can look up and try to find your SBA loan number and it'll tell you who your loan is with. Maybe you got approved from somebody else other than Wells Fargo. I would say that if you have the deposit in your bank account, you have a PPP loan, maybe they're just having difficulty finding your SBA loan number. But regardless, you have to have a PPP loan and your lender has to opt in order to be able to go to the SBA portal. You could also try just going to the portal. It doesn't hurt to create an account and try to log in and see if you can start the forgiveness process. It won't hurt anything if you just give it a shot. You received your first draw on May 7th, 2020. You opted for the 24-week period, which is 6 months. When does the 10 window to apply forgiveness expire? The 24 weeks is 6 months plus an additional 10 months, so 16 months. So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So it looks like it should be September based on math. Someone is a little lost and trying to get a hold of their loan officer. They haven't been responding to email, text, and calls. I would see if the lender has a main number, check their website. I know that a lot of lenders brought in temporary staff, or there could potentially be turnover. Maybe your officer that you worked with is out of the office on vacation or sick leave. I would just try to go to the main company instead of trying to get a hold of the person who originally helped you with your PPP.
And Amber, on that one, they have brick and mortar locations. You can always try just going in and talking to the branch manager. Say, hey, what do I do? And get that branch manager to help guide you.
This person says that they paid out their PPP loan as payroll in 8 weeks. Can we still use the 24 weeks plus 10 months deadline for the full forgiveness application? If you used it in 8 weeks and the funds are already used, then there's no reason why you can't do the 8 weeks unless you're concerned about not having enough time to apply. So you need the 24 weeks. Which in that case, it's up to you whether you choose 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 24 weeks. You can say that you want to use the 24-week period. Just make sure that it's been at least 24 weeks since you received your PPP loan if you're going to use 24 weeks. I received a PPP loan as an LLC with my 2019 taxes. I became an S Corp in 2020. I'm the only employee. Does this change my eligibility? No, your eligibility is going to be based on how you applied. So if you've made changes to your business structure, if you've hired employees, then that's totally fine. It was based on your Schedule C that you filed for 2019. So that's what your forgiveness will be based on as well. John is asking, can I use a 12-week instead of an 8 or 24-week? Yes, you can use anywhere from an 8 to 24-week period. So it can be 8 weeks, 9, 10, 12, 21, 24. It's up to you, as long as it's at least 8 weeks and no more than 24 weeks. I will try to find the CAWEB website for you once I stop sharing my screen, and I can put it in the chat. Let's see what else. I got a round 1 from Chase and round 2 from a different bank. Is there anything I should know when applying for forgiveness from the second bank? Just remember that each lender is going to have a different process. I'm not sure if Chase and your second bank are utilizing the portal, but make sure you apply for your first draw forgiveness first through Chase or through the portal if they're participating. And then you want to apply for the second draw, and you can apply directly through your lender or whatever system they have up, or onto the forgiveness portal. Again, every single lender has different ways that they're looking at information and interpreting the guidelines. So it's really up to each individual lender. So your process between the two may look different, or if both are using the forgiveness portal, then it may look exactly the same. It really just depends on the lender. So you want to look at what your lender is asking. Just wanted to clarify, can we apply for second loan forgiveness application? Yes. Yes, as long as you've already used the funds and it's been at least 8 weeks, you can do your second loan forgiveness, assuming you've already applied for your first. What happens with forgiveness if you had to reduce the number of employees versus what you submitted for the PPP second draw? I would highly recommend that you watch the webinar that was done with Carrie and Todd. We really went into detail about keeping your FTEs and keeping people on staff versus reductions. There's some safe harbors that are potentially might apply if you weren't able to operate at full capacity. So I would definitely look at that. You can also look at the form, the SBA form 3508EZ, and it'll walk you through what the requirements are. So that's something that can be helpful. You can also try to go onto the portal and answer the questions and see what comes up and what information it might ask you for.
I will post that link again for that session in the chat. I just posted that link for that session with Carrie and Todd. It's a bit more in detail on the specifics for forgiveness.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Can you check to see if your lender is on the portal through the portal? So in order to do that, what you need to do is you need to create your account with the forgiveness portal. You need to go on and you need to try to start a forgiveness application to see if you can apply through the portal. That's the only way you'll know, other than calling up your lender and asking them if they're utilizing the direct portal. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can find that CAWeb website really quickly. I don't see any other questions, but I don't know if I...
One just popped in from James. It says Chase did not use the portal and the second bank did use the SBA portal. As Amber mentioned, James, that you need to apply for the forgiveness through Chase first. So that first draw loan, and then apply for the second draw loan forgiveness.
Yep. Okay, here is the... Okay, Debbie, I just sent you that direct link in order to get into CAWeb. I don't know if there are any other questions that we have.
See any more new questions, but again, a reminder, this session is being recorded so you can go back and review it, and we will have the slide deck as well with it. So that'll be posted probably tomorrow at some point. So hopefully that will help.
Yeah, and take advantage of the resources that are available. You know, you can go on. There's no harm in trying to apply for the forgiveness through the portal. It will tell you if you're not eligible to do so, whether that's you're not eligible because of the amount of your PPP or your lender's not participating. There's that 877 number that you can call and ask questions to the SBA. You can reach out to your lender. You can feel free to email us, and we're happy to help walk you through the application process, whether your PPP was through us or any other bank. We provide that resource free to the community as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's a very complicated system, but the forgiveness aspect has really been boiled down and simplified for those lenders that are participating in the direct forgiveness website.
Excellent. Thank you, Amber. Thanks everybody for participating. We hope this was beneficial to you and got some answers and some guidance on the portal and PPP forgiveness. We continue to talk about it in our boot camps, and we'll probably have another session in the near future as well, as we want to help make sure that 93% of those businesses that haven't applied for forgiveness do apply for forgiveness and get that information and get that taken care of. So.
Yep. Make sure you do apply. You have to apply.
You have to apply. So remember to apply. But with that, we'll wrap up today's session. We hope to see everybody tomorrow on our regular scheduled Thursday morning boot camp session. Until then, everybody have a great evening, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.